Good morning, March the 7th, 2023. Beautiful morning in South Georgia. A little bit more than a slight wind. I hope it doesn't interfere with the audio. I'm going to try to shoot my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 arrows into that 6-inch target down there and see what I can do with it, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about my favorite subject. That's one. Two. I got my glasses. My glasses are interfering with my shooting. By the way, I'm shooting for a reward of ice cream, which I rarely eat, but I do love it. And if I can get all these arrows in this target, I feel like that I may go to Walmart. That's about our only store. Well, we've got Bilo here. We've got Food Lion. They do sell ice cream at other places. But that's 2 out of 6. Oh, I can almost taste it. That's 3. Now I've gotten to the point to where I'm thinking about what kind of ice cream. I like the real stuff, made out of milk and cream. All right, now, get my bow in the right hand. Oh, that's 4 arrows. Ben & Jerry's Black Cherry, Chunky Monkey, all kinds of flavors. I'm imagining it now. If I don't hit these next 2, I'll have to wait until tomorrow to try again. Is my bow correctly in my hand? Can't tell, it was close. But I'm beginning to see my ice cream melt before my eyes. But I could have touched it then, so I'm going to give one more shot. And that was a hit. Let's just go see what happened. Do we get ice cream today or not? Well, the answer is not. This is a clear miss right here. All the rest of them did hit. All right, no ice cream today. And I guess you can see by my target here, another thing that we enjoy around here is root beer. In fact, that makes me think of the ice cream that we had when I was a kid in Huntsville, Alabama, is where I live. And my dad would take us to a ice cream root beer place. Let me sit down over here. It was called Mugs Up Root Beer. And they had a chilled glass mug that actually had ice on it. They set it in a freezer, and they would put vanilla ice cream in it, and then they would pour root beer on top of that. I believe I remember that they called that a black cow. And my dad would take us by there from time to time, and we would sit in our car. It wasn't a go-in place. They brought it out to you on a tray, and you drank and ate the black cow, the ice cream out of it. So that root beer carton there that I made into a target reminded me of it. Okay. The reason for my videos is to give me a format to get me started so that I can talk about Yeshua, the Messiah, or Jesus Christ. And that is what I try to do every time I shoot. Now the reason that I do that is not just because I just like to go around talking about that. Jesus actually instructed his followers to do that. He gave them explicit instructions. Declare my name before men. And I am going to declare his name in Hebrew, Yeshua HaMashiach, which means Yeshua the Messiah. And in another language, it became Jesus, and then it morphed into Jesus Christ in our day and time. And if you're going to declare his name, you're also going to have to say a little bit about what he was all about. Now, just in case nobody ever heard about it, Jesus came to earth 2,000 years ago as a baby from heaven. He was God himself. Put himself in a human body, caused himself to be born, and became human as well as God. I didn't make that up. That's in the Bible. I'm not saying something that I made up myself. He grew up to be a man of some 30 years old and began his ministry. He asked certain people there in his area to follow him, and they did. They became his disciples. They became convinced that he was the Messiah of Israel that had been promised in the Old Testament. He went around teaching. He healed the sick. He raised the dead. He did wonderful miracles demonstrating that he had some kind of power that only God would have. He said on numerous occasions he used the words, I am. To the ancient Hebrews, if a man said, I am, they felt like they should stone him because he was using God's personal, private name, I am. Or I exist. I exist eternally. I am God. And they eventually did kill him for that. His ministry may have been 1 year, it may have been 3 years. There's some disagreement on it, but it was then, and it was 1 to 3 years. They finally grabbed him and drug him before a court of the religious Jews and demanded to know, was he God's son? Was he the Messiah? And he essentially refused to deny it. He could have easily said, no, I'm not. I'm a pretty good preacher, and you know, this has been a pretty good deal for me. You know, I've gotten a lot of attention, but no, I'm not God's son. Well, they would have punished him for the deception. They would have beat him, but they wouldn't have killed him because That's really all they wanted him to say was, no, I'm not God's son. He wouldn't do it. He knew what was going to happen to him, and he understood why it was going to happen. He was the sacrificial lamb of the Old Testament that was done every year. They sacrificed a lamb that signified shedding of blood for the forgiveness of your sins. He wouldn't do it. Jesus knew what kind of death he was going to face. There is no more horrible death than what they did to him. It was a Roman crucifixion. You know, I was watching a video about Custer's last stand the other day, and recent information has come out through battlefield examination and some actual written testimony that General Custer actually committed suicide using a bullet through his temple. And a number of the other soldiers also committed suicide in that last pitched battle when it became evident that they were not going to win. And the reason they did that is because they had seen in previous instances what these Indians did to soldiers and civilians, by that matter, that they captured alive. They were savages. That's what people meant by savages. They took delight in torturing people. They wanted to inflict the most painful and degrading death that they could on their enemies. It was pretty brutal. I don't want to get into it, but just imagine. Well, these Indians at Custer's Stand, they didn't have too much time. If they could have taken those soldiers back with them to their village, they could have probably extended that torture, but they had to get it done. But they did many things to their bodies. And when the bodies were discovered a day or two later, they described them as mutilated. Now think about this. This Roman torture was extended. It took sometimes several days for a person to die upon that cross. It was very excruciating. There's no need for me to tell you about it. It was pretty bad. The Romans wouldn't have done it if it wasn't bad. They were trying to scare people into not resisting anymore. We're in charge here. Anybody that wants to stick their head up and say, I don't like what you're doing, we got you a cross over here, we'll show you. And the cross was up there where the people could see it. Well, it was the same way with those Indians. Their type of warfare was to inflict and to torture to the extent that people would not want to fight them anymore. This is our territory, they were saying, and this will work in some cases. It didn't work with the United States Army because we had so many more troops and so much more power that was kind of their last hurrah when they defeated Custer. The point is that no soldiers killed themselves, some of them, rather than undergo the torture that they knew they were going to receive from those Indians. And of course, they would have been being tortured and they would have been saying, man, I wish I had killed myself. I knew they were going to grab me. The point I'm making is that Yeshua, Jesus, did not do that. He could have gotten out of that crucifixion. Now, they still would have beat him, for taking them on such a ride, claiming that he was the Messiah. He didn't do it. He knew he was going to get that torture. So what does that make him? That makes him a crazy man if he didn't just say, hey, no, man, sorry y'all got the impression that I was saying I was the Messiah. But no, I'm not the Messiah. I'm just a good preacher, and you know, everything's cool. No, I'm not God. I'm not God's son. But he went right ahead up to that cross and endured that horrible punishment for us. This was necessary. This was the sacrificial lamb. He died to take all of our sin on himself. He was being punished instead of us. You've heard of a whipping boy? Back in some of the times in the past when there would be a noble son of a king, they would have a whipping boy. So let's say that the king's son did some naughty act, you know, around the castle there. And instead of the son being whipped, they'd call in the whipping boy. And the only thing that was required was that the son had to watch the whipping boy getting the daylights beat out of him. And that was supposed to teach him that he shouldn't have done that. Well, of course, we know it would have been better if he had received his own whipping. Well, with us, Jesus received our punishment that we deserve. And that punishment is death. Eternal death. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. The only way out of that from a loving God was to take that on himself. And that's what he did. He offered that to us. But we can't have it unless we reach out and take it. He's handing us that. We have to reach out and take it. He's not going to get our hand, grab a hold of our hand and make us take it. He's not going to force us to accept his sacrifice for us. He wants us to accept it because our hearts are broken at that God had to do that in order for us to be saved. It does break our heart. It gives us a new heart when we can see that. And that new heart is given to us by him. I'm encouraging you that haven't received him. Think about what I just told you. A normal man, if he was fixing to be tortured to death and had a chance, especially if he knew what kind of torture he was receiving, like those soldiers back then at Custer's last stand, they shot themselves. There was a number of them that did. I'm not going through that. I'd rather die. Jesus did not kill himself to avoid the punishment, nor did he deny that he really was God. He did that for us. Okay. I'm encouraging you. Think about it. Some of you that are close to coming to him, come on. He said, follow me. Come. It's a matter of you saying, yes, Jesus, I believe that you did that for me. And I believe that I can't save myself. I accept that sacrifice. That's how it works right there. All right, this is Gardner Israel signing off.